Hi, this is Eric Blocher, Principal with McKonly Asbury and Business Valuation Practice Leader. I wanted to thank you for tuning in with me for a few minutes to hear me talk about buy-sell agreements. I've had the opportunity in my career to review hundreds of buy-sell agreements. You might ask yourself why you need a buy-sell agreement. Well, chances are if you're a business owner, it's likely your most significant asset and it needs to be protected. A good buy-sell agreement provides a framework for dealing with owner disputes when they happen. It can also force shareholders to deal with funding and liquidity issues. A good buy-sell agreement allows shareholders to control who they're in business to, and I know business owners typically want to have some control over that. And most importantly, I think it can provide peace of mind when it's done right. But unfortunately, there's a hidden downside to buy-sell agreements. And where the issue is typically with the valuation provision. And I've seen it in litigation countless times. What happens is that buy-sell agreements, they can become dated, and old. They haven't been updated since the organization was first organized and the buy-sell agreement was put in place and signed, and then it's put aside and forgotten about. The valuation language that's in the agreement, if there is any, it's typically unclear and provides and leaves room for a lot of ambiguity. Change happens in businesses, but buy-sell agreements rarely change. Ownership interests diverge over time, and especially at trigger events. And then what happens when a trigger event occurs, you have two owners that have different objectives. And if it's not spelled out properly in the buy-sell agreement, you have an opportunity for a lot of conflict. I want to talk a little bit more about trigger events. Are all appropriate trigger events included in your buy-sell agreement? Death typically is included, but it's statistically not the most likely thing to happen. Other trigger events that you want to make sure are covered in a good buy-sell agreement is what happens if a shareholder quits, or they're fired, they retire, they divorce, they become disabled, they file bankruptcy. Those are just a couple options that you want to have spelled out in your buy-sell agreement. One of the things about ownership rights you want to consider, they can come into question when a trigger event happens. Who owns the stock after a trigger event? What rights are retained? Voting rights, distribution rights, financial information, or does the shareholder only have a right to receive a purchase price and no other rights? The 5 critical elements of a valuation provision I think that are typically left out would include the standard of value, the level of value, the effective date for the valuation, qualifications of the appraiser or evaluator, and funding mechanisms. Okay, the standard of value, it answers the question, value to whom? Because an equity ownership interest can have many different values at any given time. The standard of value gives direction for the entire valuation, and there are different standards of value, and each will arrive at a different number at the end of it. They could include fair market value, fair value, and investment value. The next critical item is the level of value, and there's not just one level of value for an entity, there's 4. And each of them will also arrive at a different value. You could have a strategic synergistic control value, a financial control value, a minority marketable value, and a minority non-marketable value. And the difference between all of those values is the application of discounts for lack of control or lack of marketability, and these should be defined in every buy-sell agreement. The effective date establishes the point in time for when a financial or other data is to be considered. Like it could be the prior month end to a trigger event, the most recent quarter end. It should be defined in the agreement because it can also set the time frame for other provisions, such as when payments for the payout of the purchase price need to start. The next item that should be identified in the agreement is the qualifications of the appraiser. And I'm here to tell you that not all valuation professionals are created equal. I believe that you should state in the buy-sell agreement minimum education experience requirements so that you can be sure that the person doing the valuation is qualified to be doing so. The last critical element is funding mechanisms. You want to make sure that they're listed in the agreement, and typically most agreements have one funding mechanism in it, and it might be life insurance, but this can come into play at times only at the death of the shareholder. If you do have life insurance listed, you want to have a few items identified in there, such as does the company own the policy, or does your agreement specify how the insurance proceeds are to be handled for valuation purposes? Are they to be a funding vehicle only, or should they be included as a corporate asset? If you don't have that identified in the agreement, it can leave a lot of room for ambiguity, and you could have some litigation coming up from that. Does the agreement spell out in detail the terms for any payout of the purchase price? It should list whether it's in cash, notes to the seller, the interest rates, the duration of the payout. All of these things should be listed in your buy-sell agreement. Failure to address the details of funding can be like having no agreement at all. Well, thank you for taking a few minutes to hear me speak about buy-sell agreements. And should you have any more questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you.